Welcome to the September 19th meeting of the Rutherford County School Board. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mr. Butch Vaughn.
Please stand. I pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, I would like to have a moment of silence. Unfortunately, we had a spectator at Siegel Middle have a medical emergency, and tragically, Mr. Bill Wells passed away. And I'd like us to please pray for his family. Bow your heads, please. Thank you. First up on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Would everyone like to take a look at it? Any questions or comments?
I'd like to request that we move Blackman Middle School's percussion up to number 6.
Absolutely. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second? Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda. Any comments or questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, I would like to have Ms. Rosales, since she invited the percussion, to introduce them, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Claire Maxwell. I am so excited for you to have a special treat from Blackman Middle School, the percussion ensemble. And I would like Mr. David England, who is the band director of the middle school, to give a little few words and also to speak about the special and amazing recognition that they just received, which is amazing because it shows what an amazing talent we have here in Rutherford County.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. Thank you for inviting us today. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan, for having us, and Dr. Halford. I also want to thank our amazing principal, Dr. Jackson, who's here with us tonight, too, for her support, and all of our parents. Yes, we competed through submissions over the past couple of years of different percussion ensemble concerts and performances. We had to submit several of those to the International Percussion Ensemble Competition, which is held by the Percussive Arts Society International Convention. And groups from all around the nation send in their submissions and basically compete for a spot to perform at the convention, which is held in November. And they take one middle school group from the whole nation, and we were fortunate enough this year to get that spot. Students have done a lot of work over the past couple of years. It's not just these students that are sitting here, but the students that have come a couple years before, because they make us send stuff from previous years as well. So we're just super happy with their work, and it's just a pleasure to get to do what we do every day.
And I'd like to add, Mr. England and Mr. Chestnut put in an amazing amount of time, and we are super thankful to have him and Mr. Chestnut. And just the work they do and what they pour into our kids is just unspoken and a very thankless job sometimes. So he definitely has been here since the school opened, I believe, at Blackman Middle School, and so he has definitely built this program into this. So it's definitely starts at the top of him.
And as they get started, I'll echo that. I worked with Mr. England at Blackman Middle School, and then Mr. Chestnut was my band director in a different district. And so they are both phenomenal. They definitely are, and you have not aged like I have, so congratulations.
If age is how you feel, I have. I wanted to say something before we play, just a little education about this. This is it's an African piece called Ala Naningo. It's based on an African bell pattern called the Bembe bell pattern. It actually comes from religious ceremonies that were held in Central Africa. This is like ages old bell pattern. And I just want to show you the bell pattern so you get to clap it back. So when you hear it, you go, oh, okay, I know something. So this is the bell pattern. Here it goes. Try it with me. 1, ready to go. Yeah, you'll hear that over and over now. It's in like a 6/8 type feel. There are some sections that are kind of loud, so if you're noise sensitive, beware. But there's also a lot of soft stuff in this too. So those that are faint of heart, it's loud at the beginning to get your attention. So here we go.
Yes. I would like to also recognize Ms. Lindsay, who does a lot for this. She has a very, I were to pick a job of where to work in school, I would love to work in her precision with the liberal arts and music and all that. So she's part of this program, and it's just getting better and better every year. So I just want to recognize you for the job well done that you've done for our Rutherford County schools.
Hey, Mr. England? Mr. England?
Mr. England.
Mr. England? Who hired you?
What's that?
Who hired you?
I started at Smyrna Middle School.
What about at Blackman Middle? Who hired you?
Oh, who hired me? That would have been Mr. Butch Vaughn.
I was,
I owe him a great debt of gratitude. He is one for me.
So do I. This is awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give them just a moment to leave. You all are welcome to file in where the seats were.
Why are the microphones not on?
John, can you hear me?
They're not.
Okay. Yes, if you need more chairs, we do have some chairs over here on the left of the wall. I know, I can.
You may want to ask him to wait till the drums while he's getting them. Never mind. Yeah, I can't hear. I couldn't hear Francis on the overboard.
Make sure everybody can get in here.
Probably couldn't see real well. Just take your glasses.
Thank you. We're going to continue with number 6, which is public comment. I would like to ask to suspend the rules if everyone agrees. We have 14 speakers. We usually have 30 minutes. Obviously, with 14 speakers, 3 minutes apiece, that's more than 30 minutes. But I would like everyone to be heard this evening. So when you come up, you wait till the green light, and then when it turns... Okay, I'm so sorry. Motion to... Who want...
Motion.
Motion? Okay. Second. Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Okay, ayes have it. The first person we have up speaking is Miss Daphne Gamble. And when the yellow light that tells you that you've got like just a few seconds left, okay?
Okay, is the mic working? Okay, do I start?
Yeah.
I'm a junior attending Rutherford County Schools, and I'm asking you not to remove these books. In order to violate Tennessee's obscenity laws, books have to meet certain specific criteria. The criteria is not depict sex, and removing a book simply because it depicts sex creates a dangerous precedent. Beloved and Homegoing reflect the realities of slavery. If we remove these books for depicting real historical events, what's stopping non-fictional books from being removed? Some of the most well-known Holocaust photos have nudity in them. If Beloved and Homegoing cross the line, what chance does a book containing these photos have? Removing these books could lead to the sledgehammering of the library's historical resources. Beloved and Homegoing have won awards, Beloved winning the Pulitzer Prize. The idea of the Pulitzer being awarded to an obscene book is ludicrous. If a Pulitzer Prize winner is removed, is Shakespeare next? If these books were of seeing they would have never been put in school libraries in the first place. In addition, I'm concerned about how removing books with disabled characters will affect disabled Redford County students. Considering how rare disability representation is in literature, I was surprised to learn that 4 out of 7 books we are discussing today have disabled characters. I am not accusing you of intentionally targeting books because they have disabled characters, but I would ask that you can consider the importance of books showing disabled people in relationships. While I do not have the same disabilities as Kale, Tower of Dawn did help me feel more comfortable with my autism and improve my self-image. Overall, the book had a positive impact for me. I'm encouraging you to consider what these books could mean to somebody. Any one of these 7 books could allow a student to feel seen. I sincerely hope these books remain in school libraries, and I encourage you not to remove them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Brian Schuster.
Good evening. My name is Brian Schuster. You and I are on the same team. We want what's best for the children of Rutherford County. The people here wearing white shirts hold the same view as I do. I'm here as a concerned parent and member of the community to address the 7 books that should be removed from our school libraries. I have taken the time to read the content in these books. I hope you have in order to make an informed decision today. Others can read the content too at bookreviewrc.com. The state of Tennessee has made this clear for us. Tennessee Code 496-3803 states, a material that 1, in whole or in part contains nudity or descriptions or depictions of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, excess violence, or sadomasochistic abuse, as those terms are defined in Tennessee Code 3917-901, is not appropriate for the age or maturity level of a student in any of the grades, kindergarten through 12, and must not be maintained in a school's library collection. Furthermore, Section C of Tennessee Code 3917-911 designates the violation of breaching this law a Class A misdemeanor. These 7 books contain nudity, descriptions or depictions of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, excess violence, and sadomasochistic abuse. Continuing to allow these books to remain in our school libraries is illegal. If there's any question whether this content fits this legal definition, I'm going to read samples from the books. As a disclaimer to parents of children here or watching online, this language is sexually explicit. I also apologize in advance for not adhering to the board's visitor policy in this adult setting. The board policy states no person will be allowed to make obscene or vulgar statements. Yet the quotes I'll be reading come from the books in our children's school libraries. The irony here is absurd. The perks of being a wallflower. He reached to take off her pants, but she started crying really hard, so he reached for his own. Please, Dave, no. She grabbed his penis with her hands and started moving it. After a few minutes, the boy pushed the girl's head down, and she started to kiss his penis. She was still crying. Finally, she stopped crying because he put his penis in her mouth. Homecoming. He put her on a folded tarp, spread her legs, and entered her. She screamed, but he placed his hand over her lips and put his fingers in her mouth. He tasted her and could feel the pleasure it sent through her body. This content is sexually explicit, and keeping it in our school libraries is against the law.
Thank you. Next up, we have Miss Ellen Myrick. Oh, I'm sorry, Thomas, okay, I messed up, sorry. Thomas Buds. Sorry.
My name's Tom Buds. I'm retired from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department after 30 years of service. I supervised the Major Crimes Unit
of that 18,000-member department for 15 years. I investigated organized crime, Asian and Russian, public corruption. I carried FBI credentials and was pinned by the Secret Service. I believe that the books that Brian and we were all talking about this evening violate the state child obscenity laws, and note that the procurement may actually violate federal child obscenity and pornography statutes, as it appears their procurement crosses state lines. I believe in this specific case, it's deceptive to argue that parents can decide what their children read. They don't often and shouldn't have to accompany their children at school libraries to screen their access to smut. I spent a lot of time in and around witness chairs in state and federal courtrooms. Being a man of Christ, I believe that each of us will be sitting in the final witness chair on the Mount of Olives, where the Lord will face us from his throne with a large millstone in his hand. He's going to look all of us in the eye, and he's going to say, what did you do with these little ones I put in your trust? There's no acceptable answer except, I did what Jesus would have done. I believe these salacious books are further demonstration that our cultural values are in the toilet. I expect my elected officials to help me flush the toilet, not to put crap in it. Those claiming that we're trying to ban books, I remind you who they are. They're the ones that banned the Bible, the Ten Commandments, and the Pledge of Allegiance. And lastly, I want to say it's nice to be in a state where the school board's restrooms say men and women's. Thank you.
Now, Miss Ellen Myrick.
Okay, so starting time, right? Okay. So what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and walk humbly with your God? You all know that. We all know those. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today about a topic close to my heart. I have lived and worked in Rutherford County for 25 years. Both my children attended Rutherford County schools. First, there's been a lot of conversation about removing books that a few people have decided are not appropriate for students. I fully support parents' rights to guide their children's reading. I also appreciate the dedicated professionals in our schools and libraries who carefully curate book collections for the communities they serve. I get that some parents may not want their kids exposed to the titles identified here, but let's be real. Whatever topics and themes you find objectionable are also accessible via that little computer in your kids' pockets. When you remove books from libraries, you're removing access for those kids who don't have the privileges of a smartphone with unlimited data. Think about that for a moment. Second, you may be aware that one of the largest industries in Rutherford County is book distribution. The challenges that are rolling across the country are having a real impact on the sales and distribution of books. Book budgets at libraries and schools are being cut. Selectors are cautious about adding books to their collection because someone in their community may not like it, forcing themselves to put aside the very real needs of their core communities. Book distribution is a major force in our community, not just because of Ingram, which is the largest book wholesaler in the world, but other businesses, like my own, have grown up here because Middle Tennessee has been the book distribution capital of the world. Third, all the energy you're putting into finding and challenging a handful of books could be spent in much more positive ways. What if you put as much effort in creating a one book, one community event where schools, libraries, and everyone in the community had a conversation about a book? That could provide a real model for civil discourse. One-book events have been done in cities across the country and have proven to be a powerful way for communities to come together because books can be bridges. Lastly, you find what you look for. Rather than looking for something you personally don't like or agree with, why not work together to find and celebrate a book that can become a bridge to understanding? Change the direction of the conversation. Spend time in the light because books can be bridges. Thank you.
Thank you. I want everyone to be heard tonight. I just would like to ask you to please be respectful and refrain from talking or commenting during any speaker. The next speaker we have is Ms. Carrie Lambert. There you go.
Hello. Okay. Numerous court cases, such as Counts versus Cedarville, Case versus United, PICO, a lot more I don't have time to name, have repeatedly confirmed that access to library materials cannot be limited solely on the basis of the content of those materials unless it can be demonstrated that the restriction is necessary to achieve a compelling government interest and there are no less restrictive alternatives for achieving that interest. You as a board do have a less restrictive option. Parents who want to restrict access to information could request that their child not have access to library materials, but they do not have the right to restrict access to information for everyone's children. This appears to be a matter of someone trying to impose their cancel culture agenda on our school district. And just 1 week ago today, a school district in Florida had to return 36 books to its library shelves, including Beloved and Perks of Being a Wallflower, as a result of the Parnell versus School Board of Nassau County case. They were originally removed because someone mistakenly thought they were obscene, but they don't reach that legal bar. Of relevance here is that at least some of the complainants used information from BookLooks, which has the exact same information as bookreviewrc.com, which a board member suggested we all check out. So let's be clear. The books being considered today do not meet the bar necessary to be considered legally obscene. And that's just a fact based on legal definitions, not my opinion. And I am not saying that some of the material in the books doesn't meet your definition of obscene. I'm saying it doesn't meet the legal definition of obscene. And that's what the issue is here. The law, not our personal opinions. This is probably why you've received a joint letter last spring from the National Coalition Against Censorship, the Authors Guild, American Booksellers for Free Expression, Children's and Youth Adult Book Committee from PEN America, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, the National Council of Teachers of English, as well as the recent letter from the ACLU. As far as using taxpayer money to pay for the books, do you really think taxpayers want to waste money defending the decisions made by this board to restrict access to information when case law shows we are guaranteed to lose? We're certainly not getting our money back for those books if we pull them from our shelves. The books have been on the shelves for years and caused no harm. There is no need to do it. It just wastes a lot of our time and taxpayer dollars. So when you're making your decisions tonight, please consider the source you're getting your information from, legal experts versus an extremist website that has not held up in court.
Time. Next, we have Miss Michelle Coy.
My topic has nothing to do with books, so sorry for that. Okay, so my name is Michelle Coy, and I'm a Rutherford County bus driver. I've been a bus driver for over 20 years, and as a bus driver, we always have concerns about whether or not we're going to have fights on our bus. Well, that happened to me on Monday. I had a fight on my bus where a student was able to use his laptop as a weapon and hit another student in the face. This happened at my feet. The key of my bus was sheared off in the ignition, and my sunglasses were broken. We have to radio transportation to get help, and then we have to wait for transportation to reach out to the school to get somebody to come out to us. It was too long for them to get to me, so another bus driver had to do that and come to my aid. He was sitting next to me, he radioed for help, nobody was able to come out at that time, so he took it upon himself to help me get out of a dangerous situation. I can't advocate for drivers to come, and we all know that we're short drivers, but I can't advocate when I myself was in a fearful situation, along with the 70 other students on my bus. We send these kids to Smyrna West, and 50% that went to Smyrna West last year just at Blackman High School were repeat offenders. We show that we have a zero tolerance in Rutherford County, but that zero tolerance does not really show anything about fighting. It deems that the offense to threat of health and safety of staff, students, and intolerable disrespect in educational process, but it doesn't say anything about fighting. So these students have, the first offense is 3 days of OSS. The second offense is 9 days OSS, or they go to an alternative school where they would rather be at than at their normal school. I don't know what else to do other than say that we've got to find a better way to get our kids to not fight, or we have to make stricter rules to where they can't fight. They want to go to Smyrna West. That is what they want to do. If you ask any of the students on my bus, they would rather be at Smyrna West than at Blackman High School. It's easier and it's structured better for them. So I'm asking that in order to keep us as drivers safe and the students safe on our buses, the first time a school bus pulls into that parking lot, whether it's 6:35 or 6:37, there should always be an SRO or an admin out there. We cannot wait for somebody to come and help us. As far as the kids go, there should be stricter punishments than, oh, you get 3 days OSS, so I get to stay home and play on my PlayStation? That sounds like fun. I would rather do that. I get to kick the kids' butt, and I get to stay home. There's no consequences for their actions. Go to the schools, you'll find out. They'd rather be in Smyrna West than they would ever be at the normal school. That's why they reoffend. And I know that if they offend again once they're in Smyrna West, they get expelled. Then it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Hannah Faulkner.
Thank you so much for allowing us to speak. It is 2024, and here we are debating whether or not sexually explicit content should be in public schools funded by American taxpayers. Now, I'm going to read a few sentences out of these books, and before I do, I just want to say that as a 17-year-old, I am disgusted by the sentences and the words and the statements mentioned in these books. It's honestly, it embarrasses me. I did not want to come up on this podium and read this aloud, but I think that that's what needs to happen. So before I do though, on the Rutherford County under review page, it says mature content warning. This website may contain content of adult nature. If you are easily offended or under the age of 18, please exit now. So this book, Beloved, which one of the young ladies was defending, here is, I don't know the exact page that this is on, but I think it's on page 24. It says, overwhelmed as much by the downright luck of finding her house and her in it as by the certainty of giving her his sex, Paul D. dropped 25 years from his recent memory, a stair step before him and Baby Suggs' replacement, the new girl they dreamed of at night, and effed cows for at dawn while waiting for her to choose. And that's just a paragraph of this book. This entire book is about a slave girl, and I know one of the ladies mentioned it was defending that we're trying to remove history from our libraries and from our school system. I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian, female, or male. Sexually explicit content should not be in public schools. And for anyone that will bring up the notion that we are just a bunch of book banners, number one, we're not banning books. We simply want to protect children. Number two, what's concerning is that you all think it's okay for children to be viewing pornographic content and explicit material. But I would implore you all to ask yourself, does putting the age limit to drink alcohol at 21 mean that we are banning alcohol? No, we are just putting restrictions on it. Does putting the limit to legally drive a car at 16 mean that we are trying to ban driving? No, we are just creating boundaries. Does removing sexually explicit content from public schools mean we are banning books? No, we are asking for restrictions to protect children. This is common sense. And I want every single member, every single person in this room to understand that I get messages from people in California on the weekly basis telling me about books they found in Rutherford County libraries and how they thought that moving to Rutherford County and sending their kids to public school here would be so much better. But the response is that it just got worse because politicians and leaders here call themselves conservatives, but then go and defend keeping books like these in our public schools. At least in California, they aren't afraid to share what they believe in. I hope you all will make the right decision and show Tennesseans that you don't support pornography and explicit content in public schools. Thank you and God bless.
Next, we have Mr. Matt Fee.
We have a phone left up here. All right. Good evening, everybody. Quite the audience here tonight. And I think I'm in a good spot to give my public comment here because I think it's pretty obvious what's about to happen here tonight. The people who are against these books, it definitely appears that we're about to see some theatrics tonight from these books. I originally signed up to speak at what I thought was the work session, but I did not realize I was actually signed up for tonight. That's my bad, that's on me. But as I sat and listened to the conversation, I decided to change the topic of my comment from school safety to library material review that is on the agenda tonight. So much time and effort were put into this topic the other night. I wish we could put that effort toward more important issues rather than letting one board member try to dictate what books should or should not be in the library based on book reviews posted to a website associated with an extremist group. For those who do not know what I am referring to, let me explain. At the work session on Tuesday, one board member directed everyone to a website called bookreviewrc.com. When RCLA reviewed this site later that night, we found it alarming. The website was only created a few days ago, and there is no indication of who owns it. All the reviews on the site say generated by booklooks.org, every single one of them, in the corner. The lack of transparency is alarming, and trying to pass off reviews from another website as if they were from our county is incredibly misleading. We need to keep in mind where these reviews come from. Booklooks is associated with Moms for Liberty, which is categorized as an anti-government extremist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. This outside group has clear motives, and I am concerned about the use of their materials by this school board. Please do not give weight to these reviews. They amplify only small portions of the work and do not consider it as a whole. Remember, the Miller test says appeal to pure interest and patently offensive, and taken as a whole lacks serious literary value. Emphasis here on the word and. You can't separate them. They go together. So I ask you, have you read the whole books? Or are you relying on the samples from an extremist group to base your decisions? Removing these books based on selective reviews from questionable sources sets a dangerous precedent of censorship. Books are meant to challenge, inspire, and educate, even when they push us out of our comfort zones. Let's teach students to think critically, not fear the unknown. One last point I'll make. When Rutherford County had a library material review board, every time they reviewed a book, it was never removed from the libraries. 0. One school board member has had 29 removed. One person should not have that much input. Thank you.
The next speaker is Ms. Tammy Kelly.
So good evening.
You'll be voting on 7 books to determine if they have any content in them that is sexually explicit. The state law that if the state law states that if books have been deemed to have any sexual explicit content in it, no matter to what degree, just any. So according to the Tennessee Code, it provides definitions to help guide you in making the decision tonight that you have. But let's take a look at one of the definitions. It's number 14, where it says sexual content. It says potentially offensive representation and description of ultimate sexual acts, normal or perverted, actual or simulated. A sexual act is stimulated when it depicts explicit sexual activities that give the appearance of ultimate sexual acts, anal, oral, genital. This is just some of the partial descriptions that is described in the Tennessee Code. So let's hear some of the content from these 7 books. Dreamed of a night and fucked a cow. Sucking on my breast, the one still in her, cock testing. He put her on a folded tarp, spread her legs, and entered her. She screams, but he placed his hand over her lips, then put his fingers in her mouth. She crossed her legs, working her prowess as a cock teaser. This content seems pretty clear to me that it is defined, that as defined by the Tennessee Code as sexual explicit. This is not about the freedom of speech or topics of these books. It's not about how you even feel. This is not about creating a safe space or a mature space for these books. You are giving the position to make a determination if any of the language in these books, the content of these books, is explicit sexual content. So your vote tonight will let students, parents, and the public know how you personally stand and that comes to the content of these books. So I just pray that God be with you in this decision and that you will take in consideration that it's about the content, not the topic, not your feelings, and definitely not all this drama. Thank you.
I hope I'm going to say her name right, but next we have Zan Lasco.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I am speaking as a retired high school librarian from Rutherford County Schools. I would like to take my time to answer and clarify some of the questions and comments that came up during the working session this week. Number 1, how do you get books get to the library? I believe this question was answered for the most part, and thanks to the board members who visited libraries. We are professionals with master's degrees that do our due diligence vetting books from academic journals and librarian reviews. We have professional associations and peers. Because we are under very strong financial constraints, we use all of these resources. Number 2, bookreviewrc.com. The site that Mr. Tidwell directed you to is not backed by professional librarians. This site takes excerpts directly from the website booklooks.org. That organization was started by Moms for Liberty, a Moms for Liberty founder. If you do not know Moms for Liberty, you need to research their viewpoint on this subject. Again, it is not backed by any professional librarians. Number 3, this is not book banning. Actually, it is. When access is denied to books, it becomes an equity and discriminatory issue. We serve all students, not just privileged ones. Some students do not have the means to go to the public library, especially in rural areas like in Rutherford County. Some families can't run down to Barnes & Noble and purchase a book. Some parents don't see the need to buy books for home when students have access at school. These are all things I've witnessed and heard from students directly. Number 4, is this a slippery slope? Can the Bible be next? Yes. Once the action is taken to start defining, you've opened the door to all books. In a large high school library like we have here, there are approximately 10,000 books, give or take. In some Tennessee districts, hundreds of books have been pulled and are awaiting review, unavailable for students. This, mind you, has happened to students who've also lived through the COVID epidemic. As noted earlier, a lawsuit recently filed in Florida against an aggressive district had those books returned. At this point, RCS is one of the most aggressive book banners. Number 5, obscenity. These books would not meet that criteria under federal law, and there are no books in school libraries that would. The bottom line is this: a book is not considered obscene until it is ruled that way in a court of law. What do we want to spend our school funds on? And finally, high school students today. I want you to think about this. In our libraries, we have military recruiters that often meet with students. They offer these students an education in return for military service. When at 18, they are given a gun and sent across the world to protect our nation. These are our young adults we have helped gain a worldview as minors. If we trust them to do that, can't we trust them to understand what's in books and, more importantly, have parents, librarians, and teachers to discuss this with? A library is a place of voluntary inquiry.
Ma'am.
No
Ma'am.
a student read a
Time. Time.
There should be books for
Sorry.
all.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Lindsay Schultz.
Good afternoon, members of the council and fellow citizens of Rutherford County. My name is Lindsay Schultz, and I own the Spine Bookshop here in Smyrna, Tennessee. I'm here to speak out against the proposed book banning of the following books, and I wonder if all of you have read any or all of the books. I am the person I am today because of the books that I read as a child, teen, and young adult, because they challenged my thinking, educated me on issues I was previously unaware of. Books are a powerful tool for education, empathy, and personal growth. They allow us to explore ideas, cultures, and perspectives that may be different from our own, and they encourage critical thinking and imagination. It seems that these books are covering issues that everyone is facing today, like racism, homophobia, mental illness, disability, suicide, and sexual topics. Just because these issues are uncomfortable to read about does not mean that we shouldn't. Instead, they should be used to have an open and safe discussion to further our understanding. We are marching backwards instead of going forwards. Banning any books on these subject matters is not going to make them go away. People are gay. There is racism, and as we know, mental health and suicide are on the front of our communities right now. Taking these books out of libraries is not going to make these subjects going to go away. They are out in the world for everyone to see, and by banning these books, you're just forcing these people to go into hiding, and you're forcing them to be afraid to learn about the world around them. There is nothing that will cause someone to read a book faster than telling them that they can't read it. Banning books is a form of censorship that not only limits access to knowledge, but also fosters a climate of fear and intolerance. Our public libraries and schools should be a safe haven for intellectual freedom, not a battleground for ideological wars. We must remember that books are not dangerous. It's the ideas they contain that some people fear. Yet the beauty of literature is that it lies in its ability to challenge our assumptions, broaden our horizons, and ignite very meaningful conversation. And instead of banning these books, let's promote values of dialogue and understanding. Let's equip our community with the tools to engage with challenging texts rather than shield them from ideas that they may find uncomfortable. And after all, it's through open and honest discourse that we grow and learn as individuals and as a society. In conclusion, banning books is promoting ignorance, and ignorance is what causes hate, and I urge you to reconsider banning these books instead and focus on cultivating a love of literature and respect for diverse ideas. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Ms. Kristen Faulkner. Ms. Faulkner?
both of us are signed up to speak, and she was asking me to speak for her because she's embarrassed to read what's in the books. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. So my name is James Faulkner, Trey Faulkner. I'm her husband. As a father of 4, married for 20 years, I was personally embarrassed and ashamed when reading the excerpts from these books. Each book that we have here to discuss this even has clear and obvious sections of pornographic scenes that honestly should not be readily available for anyone to read, much less a minor. Reading some of the excerpts, it is discouraging that we have come to the point in our culture that we are even having this discussion. I believe right now, today, in my 3 minutes, there's a spiritual battle going on, and the spiritual environment is extremely thick. There's a battle between good and evil going on here. The party of slavery, the party of the KKK, the party of abortion, and the party of the rainbow sex cult are trying to pervert the minds of our innocent children. Yes, we are trying to ban books. We're trying to ban books that have pornographic material in them. Words like the word cock should not be in a book for a kid. The word penis should not be in the word in a book for children to read. And I'm going to read a couple excerpts here. This is from the Perks of a Wallflower. This scene that I'm going to read you is actually a rape scene. Okay? Our kids don't need to be reading this crap. And the boy kept working up the girl's shirt, and as much as she said no, he kept working on her. After a few minutes, she stopped protesting, and he pulled her shirt off after she said no. And she had a white bra with lace. I honestly didn't know what to do by this point, the girl said. Pretty soon, he took off her bra and started to kiss her breasts. This is visual pornography, and it's inappropriate. And then he put his hand down her pants, and she started moaning. This is visual pornography. Yes. But she started crying because he's raping her. Okay? Kids don't need to be reading this trash. But she started crying really hard, so he reached out for his own. He pulled his pants and underwear off. As she said no to his knees. Please, Dave, no. This is rape. Okay? Our society has become desensitized to sexual immorality. But the boy just talked soft to her and manipulated her, how good she looked and things like that. And then she grabbed his penis with her hands and she started moving it. This is pornography. After a few minutes, the boy pushed the girl's head down and she started to kiss his penis. She was still crying because she was being raped. Finally, she stopped crying when he forced his penis into her mouth. This is pornography. Yes, we want to ban books. Stop with the stupid semantics. Another excerpt. Melina had always appreciated the attention of Fretz and had been attentive to him, but somehow his body had not been as supple as Turtle's heart from the book Wicked. She drifted off to sleep with Turtle Heart's mouth on one of her nipples. This is pornography. And his hands, his big hands, roaming like sentient pets over her body. She imagined that Turtle Heart divided his body when her eyes were closed. His mouth roamed over her body. His cock became hard and rose. This is pornography. He nudged and leaned. His breath was somewhere other than his mouth. And I'll close by saying this. You called me extreme for wanting to protect the innocence of children. I call you extreme for wanting to expose them to pornography.
Our last speaker will be Miss Barbara Ladig. Miss Ladig? I guess not. We will be moving on to number 7, Rutherford Proud.
All right, next we have Rutherford Proud, Blackman alumnus. Clarissa Ham is the founder of Archie's Promise, a local nonprofit agency that's been providing hygiene vending machines at no cost to several local schools based on principal request. These machines have become highly popular with administrators, teachers, and students, and Ms. Ham will discuss the project and her ultimate plans to expand the machines to any school that wants them.
I'm Jenna Stitzel. I'm the Coordinated School Health Director for Rutherford County Schools, And I work with Ms. Ham to get the vending machines into the schools. So we have them in, I'll tell you the schools we have them in right now. Laverne High School, Christiana Middle, Riverdale, Siegel High, Smyrna Middle, and Rockville High. These machines provide hygiene items to the students for free. So they're placed where the school wants them. The counselors or someone on staff has some kind of token. So if a student needs it, they can go in confidence to that staff member, put the token in the machine, and get all the items that they need, and it's all free of charge.
Thank you all for having us here today. We really appreciate you inviting us so we can just tell you a little bit more about the Hygiene Vending Machine Program. My name is Clarissa Ham, and I graduated from Blackman High School in 2004. And I'm the founder and executive director of Archie's Promise. And what we do is we provide affordable formal wear to people in the community. And then we also provide free hygiene products through our hygiene vending machines. I was just going to hit on a couple high points on kind of why we started it and what we are doing to kind of scale. A lot of people ask us kind of why we decided to do a vending machine model and not do like a pantry or a closet. And we decided to do the vending machine because we wanted to be able to scale, provide accessibility, to prevent hoarding products, and we also are able to track our inventory and provide Jenna with detailed reports that she can see how it's doing. We currently have 7 hygiene vending machines. We have them in 4 high schools, which is Laverne, Rockville, Riverdale, and Siegel. And we have them in 2 middle schools, which is Christiana and Smyrna. And then we have 1 elementary school, which is a Murfreesboro City School, Mitchell Nelson Elementary. As Jenna stated, all the items in the machine are free, and we provide the principals with a card we design, which is very similar to a debit card. It's called a Hope Card. And so we load it with unlimited transactions. So whenever a student needs something, they can just go swipe it and get it out of the machine for the student for free.
I'll add one more thing. We have partnered with the Community Resource Center of Nashville, and they are giving us as many hygiene items as we need. So in July, we got 4 pallets, because that's all I thought we could handle at that time. And it was a lot of work, but we could handle more than that. So they are going to partner with us every July and January to give us all the items we need as much as we need. So every school got 2 full boxes, and we're just going to do as much as we can twice a year. And those items can also go into the machines. Okay.
That's wonderful, and I'm so glad that you all started this program. I've seen them in large cities, but I think it's wonderful that they're in our schools, because I know from when I was at Riverdale that sometimes there's children that are embarrassed that they can't afford deodorant or what have you, and I think this is wonderful. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to number 9, instruction.
Number 9, instruction, which is under tab 2, under the supervision of the special education coordinator and assistive technology educational assistant, is requested to assist students and teachers with assistive technology needs, including but not limited to post-training follow-up, observations, fidelity checks, data collection. This position will be funded through IDEA Part B funds. Recommended motion is to approve the new position of an assistive technology educational assistant to the special education department. Funding for this position will be funded through fiscal year 25 IDEA Part B funds as presented.
Any questions or comments? I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone wishing to say nay? Ayes have it. Next we have number 2.
Number 2 is the academic calendar request. We discussed this at our board work session on Tuesday. We will have our full academic calendar available for the board to vote on at the October 1st meeting. However, TSSAA has requested for us to pick fall break for the next 2 years so they can guarantee that we have officials. So that's why it's a little bit out of place. This academic calendar request, TSSAA has requested the following dates for RCS fall break 25-26, Monday, October 6th through Friday, October 10th, 2025. They've also requested fall break 2026-2027 for Monday, October 5th through Friday, October 9th. This falls in line with our normal calendar being the first full week of October. Recommended motions to approve the fall break request for academic calendars for 25-26 and 26-27 as presented.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. We are going to skip number 10. We had that at...
We have to vote.
Oh, we have to vote. I'm so
Yes,
sorry.
we have to vote on what the option that we had. The board had two options before them that were
did.
option one, which was to start having individuals that need the Premier, which is open access, and the P network for Blue Cross Blue Shield. Those individuals would pay up, the caveat being that the Stonecrest and TriStar facilities on the north end are not included. We did verify, though, that if it is an emergency, that insurance will cover under an emergency situation, regardless of which plan. The second option was to cover 20% of all costs, regardless of which plan people were on. So those that were on the higher plans would have more contributed from the board than those on the lower plans, which has been the way we have operated either one. So option one is start having those on the higher plans to pay more for those plans. Option two is to cover 20% of everybody's regardless of which one.
Question.
Yes, sir.
The option one was the insurance committee's recommendation.
Correct.
Correct. Ready for a motion? Move to
Are there any
take the-
questions or comments?
Move to take the insurance committee's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it.
Well, thank you. That's the quickest insurance that's ever been done. Thank you.
Next, we move to legal.
So at a county transfer student, the board has been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. This student was expelled for possession or use of drugs. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admissions of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion. Director of Schools' recommendation is to deny admission. However, the board can admit or deny the admission of this Ada County transfer student as presented.
Any comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to deny. Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have engineering and construction.
This is the request for Siegel Middle School softball batting cages. Principal Kim Stoker is requesting to install a 45 by 65 foot batting cage for the softball team. The estimated cost for this project is at $48,000 and will be at no cost to the school or school board. All materials and labor are being donated by a local business. This area has been known to flood periodically in the past, and engineering does not believe it will make the problem worse. It could, however, be underwater at some times. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and has no objection. Recommended motion is to approve the Siegel Middle School softball request as presented.
Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have number 2, request for Homer Pittard Campus School.
Request for Homer Pittard Campus School's Gaga Ball Pit. Principal Sherry King is requesting to install a Gaga Ball Pit on their playground. The estimated cost for this project is $4,000 and will be at no cost to the school board. All materials are already in hand and paid for. The labor is being donated by a local business and funded through the PTA. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and has no objection. Recommended motions to approve the Homer Pittard Campus School request as presented.
Any questions or comments?
Yes, ma'am. I think that director needs to explain to everybody that's watching what a Gaga field is, because I had to get enlightened the other night. So
Underhanded dodgeball inside of a hexagon.
above my head, above my pay grade.
The best summary I can give.
Have you ever played?
No. I have, because my son, Declan, when he broke his arm in 4th grade, they got one at Christiana.
All right.
I had to go because he got in trouble because he was playing with a cast. So, yeah.
I make a motion, we approve.
You second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Only one
the ayes
person
have
said
it.
hi. It's supposed to be more people saying aye.
Okay, we'll do a roll call on this.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Or Gaga bowls.
All right. Mr. Vaught,
Yes.
Ms. Sharp,
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes. Motion passes. Next, we move to Library Book Review number 13.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to offer a motion.
Chair recognizes Mr. Vaught.
I'm going to offer a motion for the purposes of discussion. I move to instruct the high school librarians, or otherwise known as media specialists, to create an area for parent approval only for books. This section will immediately, upon passage of this motion, be created tomorrow, and any library having any one of these 7 books shall maintain them in this area. Going forward, any book contained in the high school libraries that have a rating of 3 or 4 on booklooks.org shall also be contained in this area, and any book with a rating of 5 shall immediately be removed. Furthermore, any book purchased or donated that falls into this rating system of 3 or 4 shall also be contained in this area. I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, that was lengthy.
That was.
Oh,
Madam Chair,
yes.
I'm going to ask that we talk about what we're supposed to be doing with these 7 books before we move forward with Mr. Vaught's motion. These books were brought up according to state law. State law doesn't talk about a mature reading list. That's a separate issue if the board would like to create a mature reading list. And I think we need to get probably Mr. Reed up here to go over what the state law is and how we're supposed to be handling this particular situation. And then working, if the board chooses to work on a mature reading list, that's like a separate, these were challenged under the state law, so that has to be answered to.
Mr. Reed. We have a motion, we have it seconded, and then Ms. Darby would like for us to. Can you give us some?
So with respect to your question with respect to the challenge on these books, I understand the challenge on these books were based on them had explicit sexual content, and if they're deemed to be obscene, then they have to be removed from the school system. That's basically what the law is. If there is another challenge to these schools, to these books, to say that they're age inappropriate, there's a mechanism to address whether or not books are age inappropriate, and that is in the statute as well, and provides for basically the school board to determine whether or not a book is appropriate for the age to which the book is made accessible in schools. I think the question that's before you for tonight is with respect to these books, and correct me if I'm wrong with respect to this, is that if these books are deemed to be sexually explicit and obscene within the definition of TCA, then they should be removed from the schools. The statute with respect to the definition of obscenity is what we've heard other people talk about, and this is a statutory definition that's been incorporated into our state laws. It says basically obscene means the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work, taken as a whole, appeals to the prurient interest. The average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct. And C, the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Those 3 standards come from what has been known as the Miller test, which is a U.S. Supreme Court test that's been adopted to measure what is deemed to be obscene or not. Now, you as elected officials are representatives of our community. So you are good people to decide what the contemporary community standards are for our county. So it's, of course, somewhat subjective what contemporary standards are, but you as elected representatives can determine what you, in your belief is the contemporary community standards that would apply to these books. And so that's the statute that you would apply.
Are we evaluating them on that statute, or are we evaluating them on TCA 496-3803? Because that states that in whole or in part contains nudity, descriptions or depictions of sexual excitement, sexual conduct, excess violence, or sadomasochistic abuse, as those terms are defined in 3917-901, is not appropriate for the age or maturity level of a student in any of the grades K through 12 and must not be maintained in a school's library collection. And above that, it states materials in a library collection must be suitable for the age and maturity levels of the students who may access the materials. So I think we have like two different laws we're looking at, and I think the board needs to know which law in which we're supposed to be looking at before we place a vote on those 7 books. I think that's where we have to start, because I think there's been confusion about whether this is going under 3803 or going under the obscenity law that's listed in 901.
Well, the statute you just cited does refer back to 3917-901 because it incorporates the definitions of 3917-901 in the statute.
But it incorporates those definitions as the terms listed here, and obscene is not one of them.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, I understand, yes.
So if we go back to those definitions, sexual conduct means patently offensive representations or descriptions of ultimate sexual acts, normal or perverted, actual or simulated. A sexual act is simulated when it depicts explicit sexual activity that gives the appearance of ultimate sexual acts, anal, oral, or genital. Ultimate sexual acts means sexual intercourse, anal or otherwise fellatio, cunnilingus, or sodomy, or patently offensive representations or descriptions of masturbation, excretory functions, and lewd exhibition of the genitals. Sexual excitement means the condition of human male or female genitals when in a state of sexual stimulation or arousal. So if 3803 is what we're going by and those are the definitions, that's fine. I just need to be clear that that is what we're having to base our decision on, because once again, this is about adhering to state law at this point. This isn't about how I feel about the book. It's not about how somebody else feels about the book. The people who have been elected to the state of Tennessee have put these laws in place, and we're being asked to look at these books in relation to the law of the state of Tennessee.
I understand that the explanation that was given with respect to these items, that they were brought under 3803 as to be something to be objected to. The agenda is not clear, because the agenda does not state which statute these are being challenged under. So as an agenda item, there's not a clear delineation which statute is being applied in this case. I understand from conversation it was 3803, but we can discuss that. That was the intent of how this got on the agenda.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes,
Thank you. Okay, so I'm confused because I was told today, and I spoke to other people too. I need to understand how these books were being challenged, because if they were challenged on the statute that Ms. Darby has been speaking on, they should have never come to us at all. I talked to TSBA, and they said if they're challenged based upon what you were saying, they do not come before the board. But they will come straight to the board if it's based on obscene. So I'm confused as to how these books are being challenged, because if they're being challenged on the statute, my understanding is that they're not supposed to be coming straight to the board, and it was supposed to be determined that they're removed for whatever reason. But I was told that this challenge has been on the premises of obscene, and so therefore it came straight to the board. And then now, because it's obscene, so we have to overlook that statute and then look at the obscenity side of it, which falls to 3 parts, which it doesn't, and that part of it doesn't matter whether there is a part of a section. We have to take the book as a whole. So I need to know myself, whoever challenged it, where do we stand on this?
Madam Chair, can I just ask a clarifying question? Because I think there are 3 kind of pieces when books are challenged. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Reed. I think there's the age appropriate, which I believe Ms. Rosales.
No, Mr. Gonzalez, do not interrupt.
I think that there's the age appropriate, which does not come before the board. There's the obscenity, which comes before the board. And then there's this piece on 3803. So to my knowledge, there's 3 different ways for a book to be challenged. And from what I have read in here, I don't know that this says each local board of education and public charter school governing body shall adopt a policy for developing and reviewing school library collections, and goes into the whole policy and all of that. But the law clearly states that if the books meet this, they are to be removed, but it doesn't speak specifically to that. So I don't know if that falls directly to our board policy, and I'm honestly not sure that our board policy spoke specifically to that piece of law.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Vaughn.
You know, there's something I don't understand about all this. You know, we're sitting here talking about all this stuff, and Mr. Vaught made a motion that these books are going to be taken out of circulation. What is it you folks want? A book burning? I mean, we can go out here and pile them up and burn them out here in the front yard, but they're out of circulation. What is it you want? They're out of circulation. What do you want? What do you people want that, you know, you're here tonight? And let me say this. Since I got the phone for just a minute. You know, you talk about these books, but have you checked your child's cell phone? How many of y'all, if you're honest, raise your hand if your kids got
Madam Chair, point of order.
Point of order.
So anyway.
Mr. Vaughn, thank you. Mr. Vaught.
Ms. Maxwell, can I say something?
Wait, Mr. Vaught.
And then I'm after.
Mr. Vaught.
I guess I owe everybody an explanation, so I'm going to try to dive into this and look at it. I know this is a very sensitive subject for a lot of people, and there's a lot of emotions, and everything's flowing, and most people have been respectful tonight. Some people have not. Some people have got shock value out of this, and the reason, you know, Butch and I think I can say this, we're the new guys on the block, and we've asked for this job. We're both in the point of our careers that, I hate to admit it, but I'm one of the oldest people on the committee now. I used to be one of the youngest when I was first elected to the county commission, but that's almost 40 years ago. And what I've observed over the years is that we get in a room like this and everybody's a lawyer. Everybody's got an opinion, right? Everybody's opinion counts too. Everybody has a vote, and I want to respect that. A humorous comment I heard one time, and I'm going to brand it to Mayor Richard Reeves, said, he said, you know, after a hot topic one night at a city council meeting, they got ready to vote on an issue, and everybody had their say about it. And Mayor Reeves said, he said, well, I just want everybody to know this. I've got friends on this side of the issue. I got friends on this side of the issue, and I'm for my friends. Okay, I'm here for the entire community. What we are as elected representatives, this is, best I can remember, a republic. Mr. Reed, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, a democracy is where the mob rules. A republic is not. A republic is where everybody has a fair shake. There's been many definitions given to it, and I'm not going to bore the crowd with it tonight, but I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning. I've read the Constitution twice. I've read opinions about everything, and everybody's got an opinion. And the conclusion I had come to is there's got to be some type of middle ground. Some people are not going to be happy with it. Others maybe will see the wisdom that Butch and I have tried to come up with. And yes, Butch and I have talked about this. He and I have taken it upon ourselves to visit every school in this county since we become new board members. We're not done, but we have been to all the high schools but one. We visited with all the, I want to call them librarians, Dr. Sullivan, but I guess they're media specialists now. I have the utmost confidence in these ladies. They've done a good job. I think Ms. Sharp said it the other night when I asked the question, how do we get books? It's just a box. It comes. There's a box of books that shows up. Not to be critical, Ms. Sharp, but I think there's a little more thought that goes into that. These ladies are educated. You know, Pulitzer Prize-winning books are something that are to be valued. They may make you think. They may appall you. As Caleb said the other night, some of it is smut. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And I don't think that our children need to be easily accessible to that. And where this came from, Caleb mentioned the other night about having playboys in the schools. And I said, I think it was Caleb that directed that question to me. But anyway, hey, I've got the floor right now. She scolded me the other night talking over people. So I'm going to get my piece out and then y'all have at it. But it made me think about it. When I was a younger person, you go in the drugstore, the playboys were behind the counter. They were wrapped up. You had to show your ID or walk the walk of shame or whatever it is. Now, I'm not suggesting that with our students or our children do that, but I do think parents need to be engaged. I really firmly believe that, you know, and it's obvious that this crowd is upset. They just don't want carte blanche accessibility to some of these titles. Can't blame them. I don't like them. I wouldn't read them. And I'll be honest with you, I read the reviews on some of them, and you know, it is a shock value. I'm disappointed in a lot of people trying to get a rise out of everybody. We all read them. We all have seen the reviews. It was uncalled for to come to that podium tonight and broadcast this, but if it made you feel better, I'm glad you got it off your chest. But at this point, you know, you want to practice law. Everybody wants to practice law. Are you scared of the ACLU? You know, Caleb says he's not. I, for one, I don't want to spend $500,000 defending a lawsuit just like the city of Murfreesboro just got through doing. I don't think that's wise use of taxpayer dollars. I don't know that this is a hill I want to die on, you know, because of that. I don't want to take the books out and then turn around a year from now after we've spent $500,000 of your money defended it and still lose. I don't know that we would. Again, everybody's got an opinion right here. But one of the things that I read through this, and I'll wind this up, Madam Chairman, is that going back to Pacifica, would that be the case, I think? I'm testing your law school. But it was the one, some of you that are gray-haired like me can remember a comedian named George Carlin did a routine years ago, the 7 words you can't say on TV. Y'all remember that? Some of you do. Kind of humorous, you know, as a teen, before I was in high school, it was a shock value at my point in time in my career or history. And that case ended up, not Mr. Carlin, but the case, the 7 words ended up at the Supreme Court. And there was a ruling on it, and I think briefly what it was there was a radio station broadcast it, and they got in trouble with the FCC, and the FCC wouldn't issue another license, and they appealed it. But what came out of the Supreme Court decision on it was, yes, there is freedom of speech, much like, you know, we realize that, and that's what we're trying to defend is freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom to carry arms. But there are limitations. The right to bear arms doesn't give us the right to have a nuclear weapon, nor does the right of free speech give us the right to run into this room right now and holler, fire. That's a problem we've got at schools right now. We've got a lot of threats going on. And it's unfortunate. Oakland High School lost a whole day of instruction last week. And these threats, and I get it. When I signed up for this, I never dreamed. I thought my expertise would be about building schools, managing money. It's about keeping your kids safe. That's the number one priority this board has got and this administration's got. He's done and I'm going to say it, hell of a job. I haven't known the man but 6 weeks, and I am very proud to work side by side with him. But the Pacifica case came out to say that, you know, there's a time and place for everything. I think the verbiage was something like this, you know, there's nothing wrong with a hog, but the hog doesn't need to be in the living room. You know, there's nothing wrong probably with these books. For some of us it is, for others it's not. But, you know, do they all need to have accessibility to every child? I don't think so. So that's the reason I offered the motion to try to give us a policy direction. And I've been told that we run by policy. I hope this continues that way. I trust our librarians. I trust Dr. Sullivan and his tenure to hire principals that hire good librarians. One thing I think Mr. Vaughn and I have noticed is that some of our employees are taking this as a slight. That's not a reason to vote for or against this motion, but these people go to school to learn this, to administer this to our children, to teach them. And the love of reading, my God, if you could see the test scores, I'm just glad they're picking up a book. Some of them, right? You know? So anyway, that's my piece. I had to get it off of me.
I would like to hear from Mr. Tidwell and then Ms. Sharp. So everyone has been heard.
Just a couple things on that. So you're talking about defending a lawsuit to the ACLU. I don't know why my mic's so hot. But you'll be defending a lawsuit for keeping the sexually explicit books in our schools if you go that way. The content's out there now. So, am I good? Hot mic. All right, I don't know what to do with it. Use Francis.
Ms. Rosales.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me better? Maybe a little bit, maybe not. Either way, you'll have a lawsuit if you keep the sexually explicit content, because now that content is available and has been publicly mentioned. Not only has it been publicly mentioned, but the website, I want to go back to that real quick. So there was some different stuff brought up about challenging the website or book looks and all this stuff. I used the site, a guy that was trying to help me. He asked how he could help. I said, share the content. If you share the content, that's what we're talking about. So this is the easier access for those to share the content. Not everybody has the ability to read all of the books. But if you see the content that's in question, then you can make a decision based off of that. But the content's out there. The ratings, I'm totally against hiding them behind some wall, having some mature section in our schools. I think that's extremely inappropriate. If it's sexually explicit, it's sexually explicit. To go back to the discussion that we was having with Mr. Reed, I could argue it either way. I could argue it, which most of the time when I use the word obscene, I follow it up with sexually explicit, because I think we all understand that term a lot better. If you want to go through the Miller test, let's do that. All right, so this is, and I'll go through I know you talk about us all being lawyers, but I went through a lot of this on the work session, but apparently the same topics and same items are coming up, so I'll address that here. The Miller test, that's Miller versus California, 1973, would be found by the average person applying contemporary community standards. Who is the person in charge of those contemporary community standards? Who makes that decision? The Supreme Court has ruled that is made by the closest elected officials, which is the school board, to the community. So that's subjective. That's why they're having the school board do it. It's patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community. Patently offensive, prevailing standards. Who decides what those standards are, and who says that it's offensive? I think it's patently offensive that we're exposing minors to sexually explicit content. I think that's easily justified. Taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific values for minors. The word serious there, how are we going to determine whether something is serious enough that it should warrant keeping sexually explicit content that's funded by taxpayers' dollars and not handed out, but available to minors? I don't think you can defend any of those on these books. I don't think that using, as much as I appreciate the work that's been done on some of these sites and by other individuals, and I appreciate some of the items you said about removing the books that rated a 5, I appreciate that. However, those are still subjective ratings. And so I may disagree with those ratings. This board, which is, according to Supreme Court law, this board is the final stop. We may disagree with those ratings and want to pull a book out then. So if we create this mature reading list, then you're just going to have librarians stack books back behind there, and we're still holding those in our school. That is in direct violation of 49-6-3803. It's already been read. I read it at the work session. Katie read it tonight. Dr. Mr. Reed read it as well. I just don't see how there's a leg to stand on. I think what you are at and where we are tonight is talking about these 7 books. Start there. You have to decide. The content's been made available to every board member. Mr. Reed distributed all that out to us. Everybody's seen the content. You heard some of it read tonight, but you have the rest in here. You have to decide if it's sexually explicit or not. As you mentioned the other night, we were going to do a roll call vote and go down book by book by book. Now here we are debating on whether to keep sexually explicit content in here. I had this whole thing I was going to talk about the damage this does to adolescents, the studies that have been shown, the results of those consequences. But I guess I'll save it. We're going to continue to debate, so I'd like to hear what arguments there are for keeping sexually explicit content in our schools.
Ms. Sharp.
Entered into the official record. So when I spoke with Joe Padilla is a school board member in Wilson County, probably at least a 4, maybe a 5-year school board member. Under the law, the 8303, they closed their library the first of the year. Dr. Sullivan and I talked about it earlier this year. We were thinking that they closed it because they were giving out the laptops. No, they were not closing it because they gave out the laptops. They were closing it because the 8303 made them take everything that was in their mature reading list to leave the schools. They took every single book out. So we can go down this route of Mr. Ball, but this law tells us we can't have a mature reading list. It has to go. Now, we can take those books. One of the things that they suggested, to take those books to the public library. So they're not wasted, they're not put behind the scenes, they're not thrown away. So, I mean, I'm completely open to do that. But I think we've got to remove these books. They're sexually explicit, they're obscene, and I've got a 24-year-old, and I wouldn't give any of those to him.
I like to say one other thing. You know, this motion that Mr. Vaught has made, these books are taken out of circulation. And by that means, these kids, unless your parent gives you permission, they have no access to them. Now, I don't know why we're causing all this friction in the community and among church members and whoever, but they're taken out. Kids have no access to them. They can't get them. And I don't know, I'm ready to vote. I mean, I'm ready to vote myself.
Mr. Reed, I need a little guidance here. We have a motion by Mr. Vaught. Can we entertain his motion, or do we need to go by line for each book?
You can, there's a motion and a second, so the board can take up his motion.
Okay.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes.
I am still confused because when I talked to Ben Torres from TSBA, and he said that if we're dealing with sexually explicit books, they should have never come to the board. And that if we're going to be voting on the books, it's based on obscenity and it goes straight to the board. So again, how do these books came to us if they're under sexual explicit? Why are we sitting here and creating all this angst if the statute already speaks to it? I just want clarity, because my understanding there's 2 ways to challenge the books. It's based on obscenity and it's based on age inappropriateness. I was going to read everything that he said to me, Ben Torres, as I talked to him. He sent an email, but I don't have my laptop when it went off. It died. So there's the 2 ways. And when it's age inappropriate, it's whole in part. If it's obscenity, it's based on the whole book in itself, and you got to go through the 3-pronged test. And he also said just because there's words there that you may not like, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be sexually explicit, because you still have to go through that Miller test. So I'm so confused as to what we're supposed to be doing. If it's indeed the truth that these books fall on that sexual explicit aspect of it, they should have never come to us to vote for it. So that's where I'm at.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Darby.
The answer, possibly. So in 3803, it continues to state, each local board of education shall adopt a policy. And our policy reads, as defined in TCA 901, I'm not going to go into all the descriptions again with the definitions, but it says, if it meets those definitions, it shall be immediately removed from all libraries within the school district and then reviewed for final decision by the board. That is what our policy states.
Chair.
Yes, Ms. Sharp.
Thank you. Yes, when I spoke to Joe Padilla, these books did not go before the school board. They didn't vote on them. Under 3803, they just removed every single one of them. Every book that they had in there under the mature reading list, they were gone, taken up, gone.
Let's vote.
Mr. Reed,
The policy said, and of course, the board has to act in accordance with its policy. So the policy of this board says, as Ms. Darby said, as defined in TCA 3917-901, so that references back the same statute we've been talking about, any picture, photograph, drawing, sculpture, motion picture, film, or similar visual representation or image of a person or portion of the human body in whole or in part, which depicts nudity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, excess violence, or sadomasochistic abuse, is patently offensive or appeals to the prurient interest, shall be immediately removed from all libraries within the school district and then reviewed for final decision by the board. So then someone has to make a determination under TCA 3917-901 what books fall in that category. And then when that statute references the obscenity statute. And that's what the courts who have reviewed these matters have looked at. So in evaluating all these published materials, they said you have to apply this obscenity standard to them. Someone has to do that. So no one has done that yet, I guess, with respect to these books, but it was brought on the board agenda and placed on the board agenda for this board to take some action on these books with regard to them, because someone believed it fell within the definition of a book that should be prohibited.
and we have 60 days.
Yes.
And this would be the end of the 60 days.
Yes. And so it's within the discretion of this board, since this item has been brought before the board, to determine how it wants to handle this matter with respect to these books that have been brought before it. So ultimately, that's the decision this board has to make. And as has been said tonight, you guys, are the board members, are the representatives of our community and know best what our community standards are and how you want to address these books that have been brought before you tonight. So that's how it comes to this board tonight.
So, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Rosales.
Thank you, I'm so sorry. So I want to be clear. So we're not going under obscenity. It's based on sexual explicit.
You're going, when this comes before the board only acts per its policies.
Right. So the policy said that it's removed because it has all this stuff. And so we have a final review, we remove it. Right. So I think the problem is that I was under the pretenses that this was all about obscenity. But now we're going back to say that our policy says that if it contains all that stuff in the books, that we automatically remove it and we bring it before the board and it's automatically removed as a final review.
Policy says, as defined in TCA 3917-901. That statute is the statute that defines obscenity and all these subcomponents that go into the definition of obscenity. So it's a statute that defines obscenity is essentially what this statute is. And what this policy, what we have adopted does, it refers back to the statute. So you have to go back to the statute and read the statute. And so there has to be a determination made by someone of whether or not these books fall within the definition of obscenity.
So
if they are determined to be obscene, we are required to remove them from our schools, like we've talked about, and it comes back to the board for your approval as far as your ultimate decision as to what you do with these books. That is the decision that's been brought before this board tonight, is for this board to go ahead and make a decision on these books that have been brought, so that it's within this board's discretion to decide what it wants to do with respect to these books tonight.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Vaught.
kind of to go back and highlight, and Francis, I understand. I think every one of us, I have read 49-whatever, that's the statute that governs the operation of schools. You got another statute over here that deals with other things. The Tennessee Code Annotated is a fascinating work. However, again, I'm going to go back to Mr. Vaughn and I being the two oldest people on this board. In my life experience, there's always conflicts in the law. And I think everybody in this room would concur with this statement. We're all tired of the federal government dictating exactly what goes on in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I think some of us in this room are a little concerned about the dictation coming from Nashville to Murfreesboro, Tennessee. What my motion does, or what this policy change that I'm driving toward will do, is put that in our hands to create an environment that, as I see it, protects the people and the young people that don't want to see this, but yet make it available to those parents and those students that deem it literary for whatever reason. It's not for me to judge. It's not for any of us to judge in this room. It's for us to kind of create a policy and an environment for these students to learn. That's the only angle here I'm driving at. I'm not trying to circumvent something. I'm not trying to make a bold statement or shock value or anything like that. I'm just trying to come to somewhat, and I hate to use the word compromise, because I don't know that this is a compromise. This is something that probably should have been done years ago, that these books need to have parental engagement with them. If you don't want your kid reading it, don't let them check it out. That would be how I would say it. So, anyway.
I think Mr. Tidwell was next, and then I'll get to you, Ms. Darby.
Yeah. So it's already in our hands. That's what the court has decided. So that's where we're at. It's in our hands to make the decision and make that determination, as we are those. You said you don't want, you mentioned federal making decisions for us. You don't want state necessarily making decisions for us. You don't want Nashville making decisions for us. That's correct. It comes down to us. We're here in Rutherford County. We're elected officials. These people, I'm assuming, don't want to have to be doing this every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. That's why they elected us to do that. So I think that if you'd be willing, you've already put a motion out there. I think a possible avenue, right, trying to think through what you've been mentioning here and some of the conversation going around. We vote on these books tonight. That solves the issue. We go ahead and vote on them. They're sexually explicit. We do the roll call vote, as Ms. Maxwell had suggested before. Moving forward, potentially, we can have, and I think it's fair if we're bouncing off what Wilson County has done, we can have our librarians go through the collections, make recommendations, follow the law, as it says. Doesn't mean that books won't arrive to us, doesn't mean they won't come to us, because as I pointed out at the work session, the review process, in my opinion, is not as thorough as it is maybe let out to be. So obviously, if it had been thorough, then there wouldn't have been 29 books worthy of removal. And that's based off you mentioning 4s and 5s being removed, or 5s being removed. They would have been pulled out, but they were not. So in my opinion, I think that's how we should handle the situation where we're currently at. The law is clear. So when it comes to sexually explicit, and Mr. Reed can correct me here, but even the reference in that Ms. Darby had read about in whole or in part contains depictions of these things, and it refers back to the language. When it refers back to the language, it's referring back to the word that was used. So if it refers to sexual excitement, it's referring to number 15. If it refers to sexual conduct, it's referring to number 14. So in that particular order, it may not require the Miller test. It may not require the three-prong test. But still, where's that going to end up with? We're going to end up with recommendations possibly from the librarians or decisions made at the administration level, but it still falls back on us. We are still the final say. So that would be my suggestion moving forward.
Ms. Darby.
Just a couple of things to answer the question about the mature reading list and that it removes them out of circulation. That's really only to a point. First of all, we're still violating state law by having them available at all. Secondly, there's nothing stopping students from sharing that with other students, which means you have now just taken away the parent's right to know what their child is accessing because you have inappropriate content available that other students have access to that they can share. We do not allow rated R movies to be played in our school system. I have to sign a paper giving approval for PG movies for my children to watch. There's a reason for that, and it's unfortunate that that books do not have a rating system that Rutherford County Schools can easily say, we're just going to provide G and PG rated books. I'm not trying to restrict anybody from reading anything. I'm trying to be a responsible school board member. We are charged with educating children. That is our job. We should be providing materials that do that. And the easiest thing to do is if something is questionable content in regards to the education of a child, it probably shouldn't be there, period. That is the easiest thing to do. We restrict internet access. We give these children computers, but we don't give them computers without internet restriction. Why? Because there is inappropriate content that is not okay for children to witness, to view. You cannot walk this stuff back once it has been introduced to children. There is an epidemic of young children addicted to pornography. And it is not just in view form. It is in the words they hear. It is in the words they read. It is in all of that content. I am disheartened that things are getting brought out, that people are saying things for shock value. I can tell you, people don't believe that content that was read tonight is in these books. I might be wrong, but I would like to say the people that read that tonight read that so that people can understand what we are talking about. We are not talking about lighthearted, sweet Hallmark movie love stories. That's not what we're saying is inappropriate. This is some pretty hardcore, serious stuff that most children are not ready for. And if your child is, there are plenty of places for you to get that. That is not my job. That is yours. That is your child. I don't like the insinuation that because parents don't want these books there, that they're not monitoring their children. I monitor my children. My daughter came home with a book from the library that I ended up finding out was inappropriate. And guess what? There was nothing in the description of that book that would have said there was inappropriate material in there. So we are living in an age where it is extremely difficult to monitor all of the things our children witness. The last thing our school system needs to be doing is allowing access to that material. Whether or not it's going under obscene or sexually explicit, the state law, the Rutherford County School Board policy states that the board is to review and make a decision. So I think the board has to decide two things. Are we taking the vote on the motion? Are we taking the vote on the books? And if we are we taking the vote in regards to sexual explicit or obscenity?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
I used to teach math, and I hope I was a better teacher than I am now. But the motion Mr. Vaught made was that these books are taken out of circulation, which means they're not available to any student unless that parent gives them permission. Now, they may share it, but you can't control that. They may borrow that cell phone that's got stuff on there. But that's what our vote is. We're doing away with them. We agree that they are obscene. They don't need to be in the regular run-of-the-mill distribution. And that's what Mr. Vaught's, that's his motion, to take them out of circulation. And if you want your child to read Beloved or whatever it is, we could have at it. But that's in these librarians, we've got the best in the world. And to sit there and people criticize and all like that, the librarians, they do a phenomenal job. And I tell you, Mr. Vaught and I have talked to them, and I tell you, the thing about it is they understand this problem also. And some schools don't even have them on the rack. And they hadn't even put them out there. So they understand too. And that's all we want to do. I don't know why we just keep going down this rabbit hole that, we've made a motion in a second that we're going to remove these books out of circulation. Other than, like I said a minute ago, I hope I'm teaching better now than I was then. I hope I taught them better now.
Mr. Reed.
But it's either burn them out there or, we've taken them away. We've moved them out.
Mr. Reed, is Mr. Vaught's motion a motion that we can vote on?
You have a motion and a second before the board. I don't know if that motion will fail or pass, but the board has to act on that motion first before anybody can make additional motions. So there has to be a vote on the motion that was made and seconded. And for clarity purposes, it might be good if discussion is stopped, if we're finished with discussion,
I think we
eat the motion again, so we're clear on what his motion was.
Yes, are we clear? Can you read the motion one more time? Yeah.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Oh.
Can I add one thing before, Mr. Reed? Any change to policy has to go before policy committee, so this would have to be a separate type of thing we can discuss later.
Yeah, and that's not knowing everything here. That's the reason I kind of left it open-ended. If you listen to it, that's what I was. I don't have my running gear quite up under me yet. I'll get it figured out around here. I move to instruct the high school librarians, otherwise known as media specialists, to create an area for parent approval only books. This section will immediately, upon passage of this motion, be created tomorrow, and any library having these 7 books shall maintain them in this area. Going forward, any book contained in the high school libraries that have a rating of 3 or 4 on booklooks.org shall also be contained in this area, and any book with a rating of 5 shall be removed immediately. Furthermore, any book purchased or donated that falls into this rating system of 3 or 4 shall also be contained in this area. I so move.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Ms.
I need to have a clarification. Are we voting for all 5 books? I mean, all
I'm
7
putting
books?
I'm doing it for the whole crew.
Okay. Can we take a recess for 5 minutes? I've got to talk to Mr. Reed.
Yes, I'll give
Thank
you
you.
a 5-minute recess.
Mr. Reed?
We want to get this right.
We got any more water?
Caleb at the
Waiting on our attorney.
I appreciate these signs, but if they want me to see them, they're going to have to make the lettering a little bigger.
That's against policy.
Okay. It's just not, we're so blessed to live in a country like America. Golly, don't let something like this divide.
So,
Still don't think you can hear him.
We can't hear you.
yes, they say I'm on. Man. Keep talking. They say keep talking. Anybody know any good trivia? I'm just kidding. All right. So a couple things real quick. If we go with the current motion that's on the table, that would not affect any of these books because that motion can't go into effect until it goes through policy committee. So that, therefore, we would just be dodging the vote on these books. Next, the Wilson County had a mature reading list. That's what they had, what's being proposed tonight. They just removed all the books on their mature reading list because of the new state law. Lastly, point that I'd like to make is that all of the books that you have heard from tonight, all of these would all be put on the mature reading list, not removed. So if you heard anything tonight that sounded like sexually explicit content, your ears did not fool you, and neither would that be removed from the school district. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion that we vote on these books individually, as was presented the other night, and that we do not move forward with a mature reading list that can be added to the policy committee for debate at that point.
Ms. Maxwell, that's a whole new motion.
That is.
So that's a whole
Reed.
new.
I've made a motion to amend. What is required after a motion to amend?
Well, I want to say that I did something similar that you guys did, and then you guys shot it down and said it was a whole new motion. So we don't do things consistently. So I will say, since my motion got shot down when I did amend, I will say this is a point
Ms.
of order.
Rosales.
It is okay to file a motion to amend. The motion to amend must relate to the original motion. It cannot contradict the original motion. So it has to be a motion made that relates to amend that relates to the original motion. So a motion to amend is okay if it relates to the original motion and that motion to amend gets seconded. But it cannot contradict the original motion.
Well, it contradicts the original motion.
What is your amendment again?
My amendment is that we review these books tonight as you had originally presented. We do a roll call vote on these books. That part does not affect the other motion, as the motion that was currently made can't go into effect until policy committee approves it. So that would leave these books in limbo. I think it's our duty and why we were elected to make that decision. That's why that's part of the amendment. The other portion is that, and you said it cannot contradict. Well, then I make an amendment that the...
Is this going to be one amendment or two amendments?
One. Okay.
Point of order. You've already got an amendment on
Yeah, we
the
have an
floor.
amendment on the floor.
Yeah, I thought you
Yes.
asked me to repeat that.
Yes, okay, sorry, go ahead.
So, with that, I make a motion to amend that we vote on these books individually through a roll call vote.
Point of order.
It's a contradiction.
It's not contradictory. Maxwell?
Is that a contradiction?
I think the original motion called for all the books we voted on in one time. The motion to amend is to have them voted on individually. I would.
The readers list, mature reading list. So it contradicts.
It does. It does. He's asking to remove the mature.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Mr.
Ms.
Vaught.
Sharp.
Mr. Vaught, did your motion include any voting on these books tonight?
My motion stated to remove these books tomorrow morning and put them in a mature reading area. Yes.
Okay. So that.
I'm taking them all as one. We're not cherry picking.
Okay. So that can't happen because of it has to go to the policy committee meeting. So I don't know if his amendment is in contradiction or not. I just wanted clarification on what.
I will say this. I think with respect to the motion that Mr. Vaught made, it's okay if the board decides to vote on that, and that's what they're going to do, take action tonight. I think the board can do that. So, because that's not a direct change to the policy that we have tonight. That's something what Mr. Vaught is moving, and this board would determine to do tonight if the board decides to do that. I will say, secondly, Mr. Vaught has requested all these be taken up collectively and voted on together. I think if the amendment, which Mr. Tidwell has proposed, calls for individual votes on these books to determine whether or not they go in this list or in this mature category or not, I think that is an okay motion to amend if it's seconded and the board votes to adopt that amendment to it. Then you would take Mr. Vaught's motion and apply it to the 7 books individually at a time. So, and I think that if that was an amendment that this was seconded and voted on by the affirmative group of the board, that will be an appropriate second amendment on it. In the event, the second component of Mr. Tidwell's motion, though, to not have the mature reading list would be contradictory to Mr. Vaught's motion. I don't think that would be appropriate for an amendment.
Ms. Maxwell, just a point of clarification on that. Are you saying that we would vote on the 7 books individually or as a collective based off my amendment? My amendment is to vote on.
If your motion to take up these books individually is what I understood to be, you would take Mr. Vaught's proposed motion and apply it individually to each of these books, vote book by book, and have an individual vote book by book as to whether or not it falls within the category of what Mr. Vaught proposed, which is basically to have them removed, the book removed and placed in a mature category, restricted access, effective tomorrow. So I don't know if that was the intent of your motion to amend, but I understood that if that is the intent, I think that is okay motion, that is an acceptable motion to amend if it gets seconded and this group, board as a whole, majority votes in favor of amending the motion.
I have a question, and I'll get to you, Ms. Story, I promise. He had a motion, he seconded it. Does it have to be amended? Can Mr. Vaught say, I don't want my motion we go ahead and just vote on his motion?
No, but there could be a motion to amend made by Mr. Tidwell.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
For clarification purposes, how can we vote on a motion that is requiring action tomorrow that's actually not able to happen? So, no, I'm serious. Like, would Mr. Vaught amend his motion to move his mature reading list to the policy committee meeting, and we can leave these particular books separated out and do our job and vote on these, and then revisit the mature reading list at the policy committee meeting, because we can't address that until then?
It's up to Mr.
No, that is not. This bunch right here wants those books removed. And I want them removed in the morning. I want them put behind the counter in the morning. That's the intent of my motion. If you want to do what? I thought we weren't going to talk over each other. If we're wanting to create policy, you can refer it to the policy committee. Being the new kid on the block, I don't know exactly how the policy is written and how it's referred to it. You're more experienced than I am at that. If you want to amend the motion to direct it to the policy committee, that's fine. I'm good with it. We'll talk about it at policy. But tonight, My motion is to remove them immediately and put them in a mature reading list, period.
You would have to have a mature reading list policy to put them in it.
You're getting into semantics right now.
I'm not. This is, respectfully, we have a policy that speaks to how we are to review and vote on removing books when they have been challenged. The mature reading list was brought up at a previous policy meeting and was not taken up. So if you want to have one, please add it to the policy committee meeting and we can address that at that time. I have said from the start of this, that's a separate issue from the 7 books that are here tonight. You can't remove them and put them somewhere that doesn't currently exist.
Mr. Reed.
There's a motion,
Clarification.
there's a motion, a second on the floor. Mr. Tidwell's made a motion to amend. I don't know if I heard whether there was a second or not on your motion to amend.
There was a second.
I would say.
Yes, there was a second, Mr.
Okay.
Hart.
So with respect to your motion to amend, we would need to take action on the motion to amend and then come back to the original motion. So the motion to amend, as I understand it, is to take up Mr. Vaught's motion with respect to these books individually as opposed to collectively.
So they can be separate? We can.
There was a second on that, but it is not to add them to a non-existent list.
That is going to be contradictory to his motion because Mr. Vaught has proposed these be removed and put into a maturity list, a mature thing for tomorrow. So that's something he can do. If the board wants to take up this by policy and change the policy later on or address it differently, this board can do that at policy committee. But before tonight, you have an action item on the agenda. You've got a motion that's made. You have a motion that's been seconded. So from a procedural standpoint, you have to act on the motions that have been made tonight. And this, as a board, you can take action on these books tonight. That's why this is on the agenda. So you can determine tonight what action to take with respect to these books. So that is proper before you tonight. If you want to change the policy in the future, you can do that. Go back and do another policy change. That's a separate debate and a separate question than what you have before you tonight, because what you have before you tonight is a final decision on respect to these 7 books. So if you want, and I do, if the majority of the board wants to vote on these, Mr. Vaught's motion individually with these books, that would be a proper amendment if you want to do that. But to contradict his motion altogether is not something we can do by a motion to amend.
Madam Chairman, I call for the question on the amendment.
That requires a 2/3 vote.
Ms. Swope?
All right, question on the motion. Ms. Darby?
No, I need more clarification.
The question has been called. There's no more debate.
I would have to have clarification.
Mr. Vaughn?
I'm ready to vote on it.
Yep. But we're going to end debate, so we need 2/3?
I mean,
Are you agreeing to end the debate?
well, I want everybody to understand the way you vote is say, I approve or I don't approve. So it's not hard. It's not hard.
There's no discussion on, the board has to vote on whether to end discussion or not. That is the vote.
We're voting to end debate.
Yeah, I'm through.
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
No.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught? Ms. Sharp? Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
4 yeses.
It fails. So,
Can I,
what would you like to do?
can I ask, if Mr. Tidwell, if his amendment said he wants to amend the motion to take the vote on these 7 books, whether or not to remove them, and move the conversation of the mature reading list to the next policy committee meeting, is that an acceptable amendment?
No.
Okay.
So,
Ms. Maxwell?
yes, Mr. Tidwell.
So you're saying that would be contradictory just to postpone it?
If this board as a whole wants to postpone this and deal with it later, and Mr. Vaught's willing to withdraw his motion, and the second is withdrawn, and you decide as a board to table this and deal with it at a policy committee or at some future meeting, that's something that could happen, but that would require Mr. Vaught to withdraw his motion, and the second would have to also be withdrawn.
I'm specifically talking about the amendment. Since the amendment would be to postpone it, it wouldn't be necessarily contradictory to his amendment. I'm just saying at a later time.
That is contradictory because his motion is to take action tonight.
Okay, then my next question on that particular topic is, as Ms. Darby has pointed out, we don't have a mature reading list. Voting on one tonight won't create one tomorrow.
By my interpretation of what he would do, you would create, that would be the first 7 books on a mature reading list, because that's what the board is talking about doing. There'd be these 7 books. And then there would be whatever further action the board wants to take with other books in the future. This board could then decide through policy or however you want to address that. But the only issue before the board tonight are these 7 books. So these 7 books are what the agenda item is that the board has to act on tonight, or you choose not to take any action on it. So issues with respect to maturity list and books and all that from a policy standpoint is something you would take up later if you decide to do that. But it is appropriate if this board decides to do something with respect to these 7 books and remove them from access to everyone at your board action tonight. That's something this board can do if this board decides to do that.
Ms. Darby.
I'm very unclear because Dr. Sullivan has stated we cannot have a mature reading list until it comes before the policy committee meeting. The motion is to add these books tomorrow to the list that does not currently exist.
The motion that's on the floor tonight would create that list. It would.
How can it create the list if the board didn't vote to create that list to begin with? He's saying that has to happen at the policy committee.
The board action, if the board acts on this tonight, the board would in effect be creating a list that these 7 books will be going on that will be subject to the rules that Mr. Vault is proposing with respect to those 7 books.
So the policy committee meeting means nothing?
No, the policy committee meeting means that whatever kind of policies they want to take up later on with respect to books, they can. There may be other books that they want to consider, that for librarians considered to go on that list to be treated the same as these 7. But the issue you have before you tonight is as to these 7 books. So, you can call it a mature reading list or whatever you want to call it, but the action that's being proposed is that those 7 books be removed effectively tomorrow and have limited access be created for those books effective tomorrow.
Let's be clear that they're not being removed. They are being placed elsewhere and are still accessible. They're not out of our school library, which is what the state law requires.
Right.
Mr. Tidwell, do you want to continue with your amendment or rescind it?
I'm going, Ms. Maxwell, I would like to rescind my amendment since it is going to have no bearing as long as Ms. Sharp's okay rescinding her second. Seeing as we're simply moving these sexually explicit books into a different part of our library, I'll let the board decide on their own vote on that.
I think we're ready to vote on the amendment, the original amendment. Nope.
There's no amendment.
I meant motion. I apologize. The original motion, I am so sorry. It's been a long night.
Ms. Maxwell? Okay. Because of the way that the motion reads, I will not be able to vote on it as a whole because I worked because of my previous, so I will not be able to vote for that.
Okay.
I've got one point of clarification then. There's always been this magic date of September the 19th, and there's something I've read somewhere that said action had to be taken within 60 days or something, or the books got referred to the state committee. Is that what happens?
There is, yes, there is some language saying that books get referred on to the state if the board does not take action within 60 days when the complaint is brought before the board. The state will say that they will not be reviewing these books unless the person complaining about the books files an appeal to the state. So from a state standpoint, they probably will not hear an appeal or review these books unless the person challenging these books presents an appeal before the state. Because that is the state's position with respect to how the statute reads.
All right, so I want to iterate this. Since Mrs. Rosales cannot vote on this motion, there is a possibility that this would be a tie vote. And in my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order, then the motion would fail. Then unless somebody made another motion to vote on them individually, and then that motion failed because of a tie vote, then these books would end up staying on the shelves until that individual appealed to the state, correct?
If there's a tie vote, that's in effect what would happen.
So we could end up not taking any action tonight if there's a strong possibility it could be a split vote right here.
Some motion will have to have 4 votes.
Yes, that's what I wanted clarification on. So if you want the books off, you need to vote for the motion.
Or you can vote to remove the books.
Let's go ahead and have a roll call vote on the original motion from Mr. Vaught.
Mr. Tidwell.
That's a heavy no.
Mrs. Darby.
No.
Ms. Sharp.
100% no.
Mr. Vaught.
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales.
Abstain.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Maxwell.
Yes.
Split.
Ms. Maxwell.
Ms. Maxwell?
Hold on. Mr. Vaught, I will get to you. Yes, Ms. Rosales.
Yes, okay. I make a motion that we table this so until we get from the challenger who challenged this exactly how we're going to challenge this, because there's confusion. Even though we have that statute of the different definitions, we cannot, as a board, pick one over the other. So it has to be one definition, and it's supposed to be obscenity. That was my understanding. But if it's sexual explicit, then that needs to be the challenger. So I move to table this so that we can get this back on the agenda with the right way of how it's supposed to be challenged. That's my motion.
Mr. Tidwell.
There needs to be a second on the motion.
Second.
If there's no second, it fails.
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we vote on each one of these books individually as a board, as we're elected to do, on it being sexually explicit content, of which you are all aware.
Second.
The motion is to call for a vote for each one of these books.
I think you have a motion that's to take up these votes individually and determine whether or not they're sexually explicit, I believe is what the motion was. I don't want to rephrase.
That is correct.
your vote.
That's correct. I'm just clear.
Can we make an amendment to the amendment, to the motion?
Yes, Mr. Vaught.
You know, I want these books off the shelf. And, you know, that's the thing. Hey.
Please stop talking in the gallery.
You know, if you people can't keep your mouth shut, just,
okay, point of
please, just,
Chair.
you know,
This is
the thing about it is, we're trying to, you know, and
Let's, we have Mr. Vaughn.
right.
Mr. Vaughn,
You know,
we have an amendment.
Here's the thing about it, I want them taken off the shelves. And I don't see why we're doing all they're removed. You know,
Mr. Vaughn, you cannot talk anymore.
Okay, can we go, we're going to go one by one. Does that mean that they're going to be, what does that mean?
Read your motion one more time.
I'll clarify. We're going to vote on whether they are sexually explicit and should be removed by Tennessee state law based on sexually explicit content in the book, with the board being the final determination of that. That's what we'll be voting on. If you vote in the affirmative to this motion, you'd be voting for removal. If you vote against this motion, you'd be voting to retain.
Yes. Is everyone clear?
No.
Sorry, Mr. Vaughn, we're going to vote.
Yeah, just,
The motion, is a motion to, but for determination that both these are sexually explicit and should be removed. Is that a motion?
Yes.
And Ms.
That's
Darby
what the second
seconded.
was?
Ms. Darby?
Darby, I'm so sorry. It's been a long night.
All right.
Ms. Maxwell, can I get a clarification from Jeff Reed?
Yes.
Okay, so based on sexual explicit, it doesn't fall under obscenity at all? So is it part and whole? I mean, yeah, part and whole then? Is that the interpretation now at this point? Since it was never clear on the agenda how we were supposed to be voting for it?
I understand the agenda, the motion that Mr. Tidwell made was to basically determine that these books individually, whether or not they're sexually explicit or not, and if they are, and then if so, they will be removed.
That is correct.
Right, but is it based on whole or in part? The sexual explicit? Because obscenity is totally different, and that's part of the statute, and I was under the impression that you had to pick one or the other. So it's sexual explicit. It was never supposed to come to us anyways if it was that. So I just need clarification from
Mr. Tidwell did not delineate a difference in his motion. So his motion was for the board to vote, determine whether these are sexually explicit and for the books to be banned, but would be removed.
I am, for clarity's sakes, I am making specifically to the sexually explicit, which would include, according to the law, in whole or in part. That is my clarity.
Okay.
Is that okay with the person who seconded the motion?
Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Ms. Darby? Okay. Ms. Roll call, please.
All right, the first book is Beloved. Mr. Vaught?
No.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
oh, let's see, it is.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Ms. Rosales?
I know.
Ms. Rosales?
Yes, I know. I'm going to have to say yes because it's in whole and part.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
5 yeses. All right, we're going to Queen of Shadows. Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp? Yes. Mr. Vaught? Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
5 yes. The next one is Tower of Dawn. Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught?
No.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
5 yes. The next book is Homegoing. Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn? Ms. Sharp? Mr. Vaught? Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
5 yes. The next book is Skin and Bones. Ms. Sharp? Mr. Vaught?
No.
Mrs. Rosales?
I read all these books. No.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
That was only 3 yes. The next book is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
And Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
4 yes.
Ms. Maxwell,
Yes, Ms. Rosales.
I have to step outside. Thank you.
Ms. Maxwell, I'd like to take a recess until Ms. Rosales returns. I'm going to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we take a recess until Ms. Rosales is
Second.
to rejoin us.
So, Madam Chair, Mr. Reed, when a board member leaves in the middle of a vote, how do we proceed?
We just keep going.
Well, why would a board member not have to be on record? If she's going to abstain, she should abstain.
The state legislature does it all the time. They walk out.
Just vacate the seat.
I'm not saying I agree with them, I'm just saying that's what they do.
I don't know her reasoning.
If the rules allow.
Mr. Vaughn? Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
4 yes.
I guess we've got our answer.
Yep.
Thank you all. We can move to
Nothing else with insurance.
nothing but insurance. Financial report, we'd already taken care of that.
2 quick things on financial report because payroll for administrators and teachers have not run yet. This is kind of connected with director's update. We have a bid opening for Simon Springs Phase 2 on Tuesday. Is that correct, Ms. Lee? And then the exciting one is Laverne High School's addition is Thursday, that bid opening. So that should allow us to hopefully be able to approve them at our board meeting on the Monday, Tuesday. That was the reason that we had that change, to try to hit the window set by county commission. So that, if all goes well and is approved by all levels of the county commission, then we would hope to be able to have that done by the middle of November for funding.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, Dr. Sullivan, when and where do you open the bids? Here in the boardroom?
2 o'clock? Yes, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, what
Yep.
day?
Yep, 2 o'clock, and I'll also be, just because there was a
What day?
Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday, Simon Springs, and then Thursday is Laverne High
Oh,
School.
you're going to make me come twice, okay.
Yes.
All right. 2 o'clock both days.
Yes. Also, because I want to make sure part of my job is to protect board members as well, is to make sure that when our seating was moved around, because I was trying, we have had some unfortunate conversation that sometimes lacks decorum that needs to be in a board meeting. So I was trying to go with us facing each other and not facing the audience. So that was My request for us to try to face each other to be able to look at that. So
Yes.
when you look at the county commission faces each other. They are not facing the audience, and that is the reason this is for this board to decide, not for the audience to decide. And so that was the reasoning. We respect and appreciate everything that audience members can bring, but that was for the 7 board members to vote for.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me?
Are we voting on this?
No, that's not a vote. No, I was just saying that was for the board to discuss and decide, not audience. Yes.
Nothing for the Tennessee or the federal, okay. Which brings us to general discussion. And if you'll bear with me just a moment. I knew this was going to be a tough night, probably one of the tougher nights we've ever had. It harkens me back to the mask controversies, and but I was glad we were able to keep our schools open, and I'm very proud of that. So I would like to read this, please. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight or tuning in to the live stream. This week, the Rutherford County School Board was tasked with a difficult decision. This board received over 100 emails, possibly more, for or against retaining 7 books. I assure you, each and every one of us has researched and even prayed over this. We love this community, and as a lifelong resident who grew up in our school system, it hurts to see this issue tear our community apart. I love Rutherford County, and I'm proud to serve on this board and humbled to be elevated to chairwoman. Regardless of which side you are on, I pray when we adjourn tonight, we can come together to keep serving our community. The school system is very important to us all, and our students' success is paramount. I know this community is strongest when we can work together. All of us up here want to make things better. I believe in leaving such a positive impact that things are better than you found them. We have much work ahead. With the many challenges the unprecedented growth has brought this county, we have long days ahead. But I have faith in this board, and I want to thank all of you all. I know this was hard tonight, but I want to thank all of you all.
Ms. Maxwell.
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
I would just like to say that we have a principal that is getting an award, an MTSU Alumni Award, and that is Miss Judy Goodwin. She has been in our school district, I think now 53 years. She is an MTSU alumni, and she is being awarded this Friday at 4 p.m. And so just a good congratulations. She's been with us for a long time.
She's a very lovely lady, and she deserves all these accolades. Very nice. If there is no further discussion,
Move to adjourn.
we are adjourned.